Sakia. Faith. God bless. Daddy, could you tell me what's the qualification that I must have to be a politician?
All right, so welcome back to all of you. Just before we begin our program this morning, we do have some news coming in that there was a high-speed chase between police and a vehicle involving 3 men. And we understand that the chase proceeded into Pioneer Drive, where shots were fired. We are also being told that 2 persons have been shot and wounded in this situation. They have since been taken into police custody, right? A stolen vehicle was also seized and 2 firearms recovered. All right, so this happened last evening, right? So 1 suspect detained, 1 suspect believed to be shot and wounded after suffering gunshot wounds. All right, so this is something that we are going to be following up on for you today. As I said earlier, you can look forward to these stories in the TV6 News a little later. All right? Okay, so we're moving on. As I told you earlier, we're heading to Tobago. So we are beginning our discussion this morning of a recent Tha Reshuffle, which has been criticized by the minority leader and other persons in Tobago. Of course, the reshuffle concerns acting secretaries mainly. So we do have on the line this morning Dr. Denise Tsoiafatt Angus, political leader of the IDA. Doctor, good morning. Thank you very much for joining us.
Good morning, and thank you for having me.
Yes. Well, Doctor, let's get right into the meat of the matter. How do you see this reshuffle by the Chief Secretary, Farley Augustine?
Well, I call it cloak and dagger politics, really. It's really not politics about the people. And I think the Chief Secretary has a responsibility to say to the people, you know, what was the basis for the reshuffle? You know, what caused the reshuffle? And when you have a reshuffle, you know, if you're considering that this is an organization, then is it because that one division has caused more embarrassment than another? One division has created a more detrimental economic impact to the society. So take, for instance, you have, let's start with a bounty that was put out that was called back, contractors still not paid, employee terminations, and I note that a lot of employees who were initially terminated have now won their cases in court. Is it that the secretary in tourism who disrespected the people of Tobago by calling them unwashed? Is it the division that has cost millions to the assembly inside of them fighting the EMA, fighting the residents, and breaking the laws and resulting in a lot of legal fees? Is it the secretary with this unsuccessful schools repair program who is still yet to meet the needs of special needs children in our society? So we have a lot of questions. Why was the reshuffle? Why was the demotion of Terence Baines from Community Development and Culture now to being an assistant secretary in the division of infrastructure and the elevation of an assistant secretary? So I think he has a lot of unanswered questions, and at the end of the day, you know, we're not seeing that these changes will make any difference in the lives of the people of Tobago.
And let's speak a little bit about the impact that this is expected to have, because I suspect in the wider scheme of things, if anyone is considering a reshuffle, whether it's in the cabinet, whether it's in the THA, well, then I suspect the move is really aimed at making the administration more effective and be able to provide services, goods and services to the people of both islands, Trinidad and Tobago. But why assistant secretaries? You have this reshuffle, because I suspect people are saying, well, if you really wanted change, you would have reshuffled secretaries. But why assistant secretaries?
Exactly. This was not a real reshuffle. I feel that it was one out of embarrassment, because this was the third time that he said that he would have a reshuffle, and it was almost looking like he would not have the reshuffle yet a third time that he has said that he would. And therefore, the easiest thing was to move around the assistant secretaries and make it seem as if there was a reshuffle. But I think everyone knows we are an educated electorate in Tobago, and we know that moving around the assistant secretaries will not make a significant effect on the governance structure of the assembly, because the ultimate responsibility lies with the secretaries of divisions. We also question the fact that you moved a support system of an assistant secretary in the division of education, which is such a large division and is struggling even with when two of them were there. So you've moved that assistant secretary and now put that person into a much smaller division, which is the settlements area. So we're still not, clear as to why, but you can only surmise that it was to save face that he eventually just moved around the assistant secretaries.
Is it possible for you this morning to tell us just exactly how an assistant secretary works? Because my impression is, well, the assistant secretary is to assist the secretary of a division, and it's the secretary of the division who is the real shot caller there, and the assistant secretary really assists the secretary of the division. Is that how it works?
Absolutely, because legally, the secretary is the one who has to sign off on almost everything. The assistant secretary can sign and recommend, just as your administrator recommends, but it's ultimately up to the secretary to give that final sign-off and approval on anything. So, like I said, moving the secretaries around really did not, the assistant secretaries is not of great impact, except perhaps you may have had relationships that were not working, and maybe they decided to change that around. But relationships not working means that there is a lack of leadership skills and management skills amongst your secretaries if you're depending it on a relationship issue.
Let's talk a little bit, because Mr. Augustine also said that he will present his final budget as Secretary of Finance, Trade and Economy, and will vacate that post from July 1st when a replacement will be named and installed. How do you see this?
Well, he has the opportunity that since Watson Duke left, Assemblyman Duke left, he did not replace a secretary because we're supposed to have 9. And so he kept it at 8. So there is a space there, which is why I wondered why you had to demote the Secretary of Community Development in order to elevate the Assemblyman Joel Sampson. However, in terms of the finance role, he has a couple of opportunities. Number one, he can elevate another assistant secretary and move them into that role, or, again, create a reshuffle at that point. He also has the opportunity of really looking for expertise outside of the assembly. And that is really needed right now because the economy is in a bad shape. And therefore, looking for an expert coming in from outside, which would mean he would have to terminate one of his counselors and bring in that new expert opinion. Or, who knows, I call it a wild card. Maybe he's getting back together with his leader and bringing Assemblyman Watson may cross the floor again and become the finance secretary. Who knows? But what is to note is that at the end of the day, a finance secretary and a chief secretary must work together in serious collaboration in terms of providing the solutions and the strategies required to take Tobago forward. And if you don't have that, then you can have a chief secretary who has no reins over the assembly, because the finance secretary essentially controls the money and therefore will control the divisions.
What's your assessment now of his entire administration? How has it worked for the people of Tobago?
I think we are very disappointed. This administration came into office with high hopes from the people that they were going to fix things and that we would have a better life. And the quality of life of Tobagonians has really gone down the tubes. There is decisions that were made that were not good for us. Tobago is very small. When you terminate so many people when you came into office, it caused a serious problem. The buying power of people totally got wiped out. When you didn't pay contractors coming in, again, the buying power took a great hit. And so what you had was the buying power lessened. You have that effect on the private sector. Because private sector cannot keep up, they too had to let go staff. So it is a ricochet effect that we are having in Tobago. And I don't know that they have the answers in terms of taking the economy, putting us back on track, and making sure that our quality of life is improved on the island.
Yeah. You have a situation now where, to me, it seems to be picking up steam in Tobago, and I'm sure you'll be able to tell me if I'm right or wrong. But this issue of crime, I think that we're seeing Tobago being portrayed in a certain way these days, and it is because of the crime situation in Tobago. Just yesterday I was looking at a video where someone was attacked. I believe that the individual was chopped. And these videos, these scenes of Tobago, these incidents that are crime-related in Tobago, it is something new to all of us, and I'm sure to all Tobagonians. How do you view what has been happening as it relates to crime in Tobago?
Well, people have to find ways of feeding their families and taking care of themselves, and they're resorting to a life of crime in order to do that. So the economy is in some way linked to what we have emerging in the crime situation. I mean, imagine we are up to about 8 murders. 3 of those murders are women. And as a woman, I felt very, very strongly about that. And so I invited and I worked with some concerned citizens to actually have a march on Mother's Day. Mother's Day was I'm a mother, and also it was my birthday. And I decided in the evening that I was going to devote my time and sacrifice that time to have a march and make a statement. And I want to thank publicly all those persons who came out, all those persons who said, words of support for it. Because it's about making a statement. It's about getting into action. It's about doing something against it. I don't think that this administration has spoken out enough, put actions enough to deal with the crime situation. Just on Monday, I collaborated again with the Family Life Transformation Group that came to Tobago, and we took 5 of those victims affected by the crime and gave them hampers and some cash to go home with. And it was sad to know that this assembly does not have anything in place to support the victims of these of the families of the victims of these violent crimes. And therefore, that is something I would like to see them work on. I mean, we saw a lot, them give a lot of compassion and quite empathy, a lot of empathy to the victim of the shark attack. And I thought that was great. But what about the same level of empathy and compassion for our own people who lost, the families of the victims who lost their lives? They lost their lives. They are children who are at stake. And I would really love for this assembly to do more in that regard, because it's a chicken and an egg situation. Do we allow, a lot of retaliation to occur for these crimes, and therefore you have a continued spiraling of the society along that road? Or what else are you going to do? Just calling on people to say that they have to speak out is not enough. What is the social net doing for the victims, the families, the children that are left without a mother, without a father?
You feel that the police are doing enough to clamp down on the situation in Tobago?
Well, let me tell you, the police have their hands full, and I noticed that they had the recent CCTVs put in, and hopefully that will help the situation. But it is spiraling out of control, and we also have to begin looking at our borders. There's no security, real security between Trinidad and Tobago in terms of how guns may be coming in. There's no real security in terms of our borders around the island, in terms of how these shipments come in. So we are sitting ducks here in Tobago, and that is why about a month ago or even more, I would have written to the Prime Minister. I'm yet to receive a response from him regarding Tobago's peculiar situation, because we are not directly responsible for security measures on the island. And what the Chief Secretary has put into place, calling the TTPS and others to volunteer on a committee, is not enough. Tobago has to have some seat at some special agenda where we sit at the National Security Council, and therefore the security apparatus coming out of that is natural to us. You don't have to ask, people to volunteer and work with the THA, but at that level, they know they are responsible to work with the THA, and it is coming out of that level of instruction. Yeah. But the current Tobago House of Assembly Act does not allow us to have any responsibility at all for security. Is it not a more dire situation for Tobago because Tobago is promoted as a tourism destination and relies so heavily on the tourism dollar? It is, because what you have is the advisories coming out of people need to be careful where they go, what they do, or even travel to the islands. And therefore, that is why it's also very important that we be seen as priority in terms of having a security apparatus that is legally handed over to us. Yeah. Mrs. Tsoiafatt, let me take you into another direction this morning to deal with a situation that has been affecting Tobago over the past few months, and that is the oil spill. Let's speak a little bit about the management of that, how the THA has dealt with it, how the government here or the cabinet here, however you want to put it, the central government here has dealt with it. It's like parents in a home. If you have parents in a home that are fighting and tugging and everything else, the home does not work as effectively as it can. And I do believe that the relationship between the Chief Secretary and the Prime Minister has not created the effectiveness of this oil spill cleanup that we should have seen over time. And the effect of the oil spill is not just about the cleanup exercise. There's a lot to be studied. The biodiversity, the health of our people living in the area, all of those are going to be impacted for generations. I mean, our people have looked up some of the research, and it was thought that even the shark attack may have been triggered by the oil spill, that the sharks being in those chemical waters at this time have literally gone mad, and that their behaviors are no longer predictable, and this is how they're operating. It's also felt that with the movement, or with the movement of the small fish that we would normally eat, they moved into a different area, or they were wiped out, and therefore the shark had to look for food. So the oil spill is going to be impacted for us for generations to come, and I am not comfortable that they are looking at that broader picture, and that they are only looking at picking up how many barrels of oil that you can pick up. Yes, and that is important, but it's time that we start looking at the bigger picture and the impact on Tobago and on the Tobago economy, and how are we going to treat with that. They reported that it was $12 million so far that they have spent. It's way more than that. The impact on the economy is way more than that. The fishermen, the downstream income from that, it's going to be way more, and it has to be studied.
Yeah. Dr. Denise Tsoiafatt Angus, it's always a pleasure speaking with you. Thank you very much for joining us this morning, ma'am.
Thank you for having me.
All right, bye for now. So it's time to take a quick break. We do have this for you. Breadfruit boy bearing at the ground level? What? I need to get a tree like that. And it's from Ken Mahase in Guayco. Ken, thank you very much. I'm going home and try that, all day. We're coming back, everybody.
And your heart in the UNC. Can you be your Brunswick Street party whip and fighting for our leadership? You must swear on Bible and take false oath.